Hey guys, this is Gabe. I'm here with Ronin Man, and we're in beautiful New Jersey on a nice sunny day. Today, the question I have for Ronin has to do with standards and the standards that a man should have for himself, but I'm also curious about the standards that you've had for yourself and how those standards have changed as you've grown up and as you've become a man, and then as you've come into your age now. And the reason I'm asking, I'm a young man in my early 30s, and I've kind of hit a stride where I feel like my standards for how I present myself, my environment, all that, should be a little bit higher. And I'm curious how you saw those things when you were in your 30s as opposed to now, because I know now you carry yourself in a certain way. Do you think it's necessary for someone in their 30s to carry themselves differently than someone in their 40s carries themselves from someone in their 50s? And the standards they should have for themselves as far as the clothes they wear, the car they drive, the people they associate with, etc.
Okay. Let's see. There's a lot of angles on this one. First, I'll say let's take away the ages, because I don't think the ages is a big factor. I think it's more like that my perspective. Okay, so for example, I was born in Arizona in the desert, right? It was very rural. There wasn't much there. A trailer park, and then outside the trailer park, it was just pretty much desert, And so we didn't have a lot of social pressure, in the trailer park. There wasn't like, it didn't really matter as I remember. Of course, I was a kid, but still, it's pretty obvious. There wasn't a lot of, you had to wear these kind of clothes or this or that. And so people were sloppy, right? And also my family in Minnesota are similar because they're really from like the middle of nowhere. Like the town was like a few hundred people, right? And even the town was like I know my parents, like their closest neighbor was 6 miles away. The closest human being was 6 miles when they were growing up. So they moved naturally to a similar place in the desert. We were just and so there wasn't any kind of, I didn't think there was any kind of pressure at all to dress anyway or have any car or anything like that. I don't think anybody really, there's nobody there. You know what I mean? So the trailer park, we had other people in the trailer park, but so there was some kind of minor pressure. But I think what happens long-term with that, when you don't have pressure, rather than standards, I would say pressure, because I don't think standards come from internal wisdom. I don't think that you kind of realize you have to up your game. I think a lot of times pressure comes from social outside pressure. We like to think that we control our destiny and we're so smart. We make all these fucking decisions, but I don't think that's the way to improve yourself on this level. The way that you do it is by putting yourself in situations that are more challenging, where you look like an idiot and you're forced to realize that you're not reaching a standard, right? So probably what's going on in your mind, my guess is you're seeing something and you're realizing that your standards are not high enough, and you're like, shit, what do I do now? Well, what you do is change, because you're seeing that. See, so this is not from the outside. This is from the inside. You're seeing that something you did before doesn't work now, right? So for me, I know when I look at my family in Minnesota, who a lot of them have passed away now, but because they were older, right? But I remember, and I talked about Uncle Oscar. Uncle Oscar, he had a bunch of land, and he had a sawmill, and that sawmill was pretty profitable. So he never had to leave his house. He never had to leave his house. And he liked to wear a train uniform, kind of a conductor's thing. It was like an overalls thing. And so he would buy these things at some stores near there. And then he would, a white t-shirt, like a wife beater shirt, right? And then the conductor's overall things was white with these gray stripes. And then when it was time to clean it, he had a big house because he had this big land. And so he threw the dirty clothes into one room. And then he would buy new clothes. Because his sawmill was like a money machine. So he never had to worry about money. People would come with their logs to his house, and he had like a Volkswagen engine on this like beautiful sawmill. The sawmill was so beautiful that Sean Connery wanted to put it into The Name of the Rose, that movie. They actually went to his house and filmed his sawmill for that movie. But he was such a pain in the ass, they ended up not using it. Because he was telling them, oh, you can't do this, you can't have that, don't do this. And they're like, okay, fuck off. So they didn't use it in the film, unfortunately. But that's how interesting it looked. I remember as a kid, it just had pulleys everywhere. And it was like a mad scientist cartoon or something, right? And that's why it was, good enough. But because there was no outside pressure, he never like upped his game at any level. And you might say, oh, well, that's what going your own way means. It means that you don't care about those things. And while that's true at some perspective, I think it's important to realize is that you are not the man you are going to become. And you kind of don't know what that man is going to be because he's going to adapt to the environment that he's presented with, right? So for my other relatives, Uncle Paul, he was similar. He was very intelligent, and Uncle Paul was total alcoholic, and he would just sit in his trailer and drink, and people would bring their cars to his trailer, and he was like a genius mechanic. He would put his wrench up against his ear, put it against the engine. He would know right's wrong. He'd fix it, and he would be totally drunk and fix it and get paid cash, and he'd go in his trailer and drink, and he never had to leave. So that was Uncle Paul, Uncle Oscar. And so I saw them, and I saw that way of living, and I realized at a young age I don't want to be self-will run riot where, I want pressure on me to improve. And when I tell people like I want comments, and when people say things, question me or say incorrect things, I'm totally serious about that because I am always looking for that pressure, for that improvement. I don't mean like just willy-nilly criticism. I mean like when somebody is actually looking at you and saying, well, I can see what you're missing and you can't see it. Then it's like, let me say what I think might be missing, in a way that could help you, right? That's what friends do to each other, right? They don't just brag on their friends because they know that's not going to help, right? They think of ways to help. So I guess in a comment perspective would be from, I think, helpful perspective is my most favorite type of comment. But sometimes a hurtful comment can be helpful too. And also feeling embarrassed is a good motivator for humans, in my experience. And so to put this in perspective, when I moved to Tokyo, I was young, as 25, and in Tokyo, I had never lived in a big city. I had visited Paris a lot because my sister lived there, and I had been to London, and I had been a lot of places actually, Singapore and Hong Kong, but I still hadn't changed yet. I was like this same person from the beach, so I still dressed like a guy who lives on the beach, and some people like that. So it's not like sometimes you're going to do things that don't help you, but no one's going to say anything because they kind of like you to be this limited person or something. They kind of like to laugh at you, or they like to see you as this, like a cowboy. I knew a cowboy in Tokyo, and he used to wear a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and like full-on cowboy in Tokyo. He lived there for like 30 years. He never changed the way he looked. And he always looked like a full-on cowboy, which is great, and there's something good about that. I'm not saying that's bad. He was a character, no question. But I know other people who, they are cowboys or surfers, but they're also astrophysicists, or they're also, leaders, and they have other perspectives. They have multiple, like they have multiple complicated, interesting sides to them, right? Due to their ability to morph and change and to integrate and then to discard, right? So for me, I think the problem is your question is wrong, because it's like, what are the standards? And it's like from the outside. In a sense, it is from the outside, but it's how the outside bounces. It's like when you echo your voice in the desert or in the mountains, it's your voice, it's your voice echoing off the mountains, and you're hearing your own voice. So I looked in the mirror in Tokyo after living there for like a year, and I never had a winter jacket because I grew up in a place you don't need one. You don't need one in the desert, really. You don't really need one. Although it does get cold. But if you're tough, you don't really need one. And I didn't need one. And then on the beach, I never needed one. For skiing, I had one, right? That's it. But it was just, I wore it like a few times a year. That's it. So, going to Tokyo, that's what I did too. I just never changed. I didn't have a winter jacket. And then finally, after like a year in Tokyo, I'm like, everybody here is wearing down jackets. And I'm like, I never had a down jacket. So it was almost like I was scared of buying a down jacket because it wasn't me. And then finally, one day I thought, I'm going to go shopping with a girl for down jackets. And this is crazy, but I'm going to go do it. And we went there, and she said, oh, this will look good on you. Like, no big deal. For me, it was a big deal because it was almost like a new image for me. Like if it was a very new image for me, right? And she's like, oh, this looks good on you. Let's get this one. And I think she bought it or whatever. And I was like, we were out of there in like 2 minutes. And I was like, whoa, that was easy. And all of a sudden I'm walking around this new jacket, feeling totally different. And I really, really liked it. I still love down jackets, And I feel bad for the birds, but I think there's a lot of benefit. A jacket I can use forever, right? I even brought my down jackets to China, had them taken apart, and the guy washed the down and made a new jacket with my zippers and the same feathers. So I was able to recycle the feathers. And the guy did a great job. And my second down jacket from my first down jacket was even better. He used better material and looked really nice. I picked the color I wanted. My first one was kind of a flashy one. Then I got a really cool one. So I do feel bad for the birds. But anyway, I like down. So I think that's a good, and also everything in my life changed when I moved to Tokyo after about a year. Tokyo is and was a very sophisticated place, especially in the early 90s. Japanese dressed, I don't know if you call it, they're very sophisticated and they dressed well, okay? And I would say that definitely Asians dress well. People in Asia dress well in general. And what a lot of people that visit Asia don't notice is that they look like idiots. Seriously, they do at first because they're not from a big city. Now, people from New York, when they go to Tokyo, they know what's going on. They know what the deal is, right? But the farther you get from a city, the more that you don't. And when I say, what do you call it? Let's just call it personal improvement, okay? I mean everything. I mean like grooming, trimming, styles, clothes, vocabulary, mannerisms, thinking of other people. Because people in Tokyo, Japanese people are really good about thinking about other people. They're really good at it, mainly because there's so many people. They have to, right? And it's part of the Japanese culture. I don't mean that like some bullshit. That's true. Japanese culture is definitely, because they're forced to live that many people together. They have to be like that. And Japanese culture, just because of the way the rice villages were in the old days, the water went down a little stream, and it went down like through past all the houses, zigzag down the mountain. Each person had to maintain that stream. Otherwise, the water wouldn't go to each person's rice field. People would have no rice. So there was this kind of collectivism they had to practice. Otherwise, there wasn't food, right? And also they had to keep the animals out of the place, because there's no flatlands in Japan. So it's all kind of rough living in Japan. You're always like carving your way out of the mountain, and then the mountain's always taking it back. That's Japan. The nature always takes over in Japan, right? And because it's semi-tropical, it happens pretty fast too. And that's what's happening now with the aging of Japan. The villages are shrinking, and then it's just becoming nature again, So, but because of that, thousands of years of Japanese culture, and also coming from Chinese culture too, those two things together make it very much collectivism. And of course, there's bad parts of it, but there's really good parts of it. And the good parts of it is that people are polite to each other, even if they don't like them, And I like that. I really do like that. It's very nice to live in a place like that. You might say it's fake, but hey, if you live there for 10 years and to come back to me and tell me how you think about it. Americans just coming up to you and saying stuff. You're going to be like, whoa, the fuck's wrong with these people? Like seriously, there is definitely a classiness and a thinking of other people that you get in big cities in Asia, that especially Tokyo and Osaka, that are really, I feel very valuable. Anyway, so the longer I was in Tokyo, the more I was able to change the way I dressed, the way even like I said this before, but simple things like the way you turn around. So for example, when I turned around, I never noticed this, I would swing my arms out because on the beach, there's nobody there. You're not going to hit anybody. And so I would turn around without thinking of my arms. I just spin around. Whereas in Tokyo, the first time I spun around, I was in a shop and I hit something, right? And I hit something like an item. And then another time, a person, So then I realized, oh man, you got to keep your arms in close. And then you got to turn around slowly and kind of look. It's kind of like when you cross the street. In Tokyo, it's something as simple as moving your body is like crossing the street in America. You have to look both ways, and make sure there's nobody there, right? So I learned to have better mannerisms. And here in America now, those mannerisms come in handy because, for one thing, America's getting more crowded and it's getting more sophisticated. And so those Japanese traits, they're really handy now. For even in America, like parking spaces are smaller than before. American parking spaces used to be fucking huge when I was a kid. I mean, they weren't even like, I remember like the 60s, man, 70s, like parking lots were huge and they weren't even full. There was tons of empty spaces. Now I go to a supermarket and you have to drive around in Southern California to find a space. And when you do, they're really small. Not as small as Japanese, of course. I really improved my parking and driving in Japan too. So this extends from the way you walk, stand, groom, dress, talk, to the way you drive, the way you, work together with people. So for me, like the best way for me to improve my standards, and when I say improve, I do mean improve because I never changed being Paul. I found a way to integrate, let's just call them improvements or refinements, without changing myself. And I think that's what everybody's afraid of. I'm sure there's a lot of guys on this channel, I know because I've met a lot of you at the summits, who are afraid of changing because you think that you're going to become somebody else. But when you change, it's the same as the best example is learning Chinese. When I learned Chinese and Japanese, both exactly same phenomena. I would learn from girls. Most of my teachers were girls. My girlfriends were teaching me. And in Asia, that women and men have different vocabulary, especially in Japan. Really in Japan, more than China. But in China, there is definitely that. But in Japan, 100%. And so when you learn a language, you mimic. You can't be creative. You can't be yourself. You have to exactly mimic like a parrot. They say something, they say blah, blah, blah. You say blah, blah, blah. That's all you can do when you're learning a language. That's the best way. Don't try to go too into the meaning. Mimic. This is one of my top recommendations if you learn a language. Fuck all these people thinking too much. Mimic. Like a fucking parrot. Mimic exactly what they're saying. Look at their mouth very closely and mimic. Mimic the speed, the cadence, the sounds, the amount of air coming out of their mouths, all that stuff. Mimic, mimic, mimic. And then learn words and then sentences. And then slowly what will happen is you will master it. And then once you've mastered it, you will find that your personality will integrate with this language like a miracle. Almost like the first time that you learn to balance on a bike. It's just like 1 minute you can't do it at all, and the next minute it's not a problem. That's how learning is. So learning is first, you don't keep yourself. You lose yourself. You mimic like a robot, the human mind. That's how we learn. And then later on, as that becomes, I think you get the perspective, right? So that's when I say change, you have to keep in mind that there's a period where you're going to feel like an idiot and you're going to feel like you're not doing your own thing and you're fake, right? And in this period, this is another important thing. In that period, other people know it, okay? And humans, as nice as they are also animals. You know, we are all animals. And we don't even know ourselves. And so animals strike at weakness. There's some part of us that goes for weakness, right? You know, we do. Everything we do. We look for opportunities to eat, to sleep, to have sex. That's what we do. We look for opportunities, right? And those opportunities, like when an animal's hunting, he sees a weakness. The slowest animal, he's not going to go for the fastest animal in the pack. He's going to go for the one that's behind, right? And so when you are changing, you are not congruent. Okay, so the people around you know you're not congruent. And there's something in their subconscious that will test you. Okay, let's just say, not say attack you, they're going to test you because you're very incongruent. You're like acting weird. And they're going to say, what is this, Gabe? What are you doing? You know, you're not fucking this guy. You're not an MMA guy. You know, like they're going to give you shit as you're changing. And then I think what your job is to realize that you are changing, they are noticing it, and that now is the moment when you need to either accept, one is this is a process. It's a painful process. Not extremely painful, but it is not fun. That's why people don't grow. That's why people don't improve their standards. But it's a rocky road. Okay, it's not a smooth road. And so you have to accept that they're doing what they're going to do, probably what you do to them, right? And at the same time, you have to say, wait a second, I do look like an idiot, right, in this moment, but am I serious about this change? And if you're serious about this change, just say, you know what? It's going to be okay. I'm going to continue, because sometimes you will realize that this is not you. You might be doing something that's not you, and you might decide at this moment, I don't think I want to do this. Like, I don't know. I didn't really realize I was changing in this way. I don't like this change. This didn't work. He's right. This is a good time to turn around, right? You know, sometimes when you're driving one way and you realize you're going the wrong way, it's hard to go back because you have to go all the way back to where you started, right? That's why people don't like to turn around. Those keep going, right? At this moment, you have a choice. And are you in that perspective where you've turned wrong and you actually have to spend some time going back? Or are you probably in the process of improving and increasing your standards? And so if that's true, all you have to do is keep going and just, you know, you're going to get through it. You're going to be an MMA fighter, right? You know, because I know you train, right? It's like you're going to be good, right? Or whatever it is that you're going through, right? So I think with standards, the idea of the word standards sucks. And the age thing sucks. It's not about any of that. You will find things useful at different ages. So we talked yesterday about how you might move into management. There's another example. When you're young, moving into management sounds like a terrible idea because everybody hates the boss. Nobody wants to be friends with the boss. And everybody kind of, you know, most workers, they kind of like gather together and the boss is like over there, you know, because he can fire them and all that, right? So there's this kind of immature thing where guys will just like talk shit about whoever's over them, right? The man, you know, this is a immature perspective, right? But a mature man knows there's nothing wrong with that camaraderie. I'm not saying that. But also, as you mature, you see life from a different perspective and you realize that there is value in other things, right? And so maybe management, maybe there is some value there for you. You know, maybe becoming that new person that's a manager that you might have hated when you're 25. And I often say this is like one of the biggest barriers to my change was I remember when I would see these things. And I actually think I would go so far to say is why I've been able to change and a lot of people that I knew didn't is because I was willing to become the person I hated when I was younger. Okay, so, and I don't really mean hated, but you know what I mean? The person I didn't want to be, right? And because I grew and I saw there was benefit to something I didn't see benefit before, right? Now, other times I never change. There are certain things that I really hold on to more than anybody else. Like I'm like a kid. Like I get on my hands and knees, crawl under the table, I sleep on the floor. I do things. Kids love to play with me because I'm just like a kid. I don't have to get into their perspective. They're like me. We can get on the ground. We can look for worms, right? We can go climb trees. We can wonder what's behind this or that. What if you dug a hole here? That part of me, it really never went away, right? So when I see, like when I film videos, often I'll film behind the building or the garbage cans or the tunnel or, or just some kind of place I would have wanted to hike around when I was a kid. Because they're always kind of interesting to me, those behind perspectives, those unseen perspectives, those what is their perspective, my curiosity. So you will eventually trust yourself, okay? Trust yourself, even if everybody hates you around you at some period. Because in the end, all of it is just noise. All of it is just noise. In the end, you're born alone, you're on a solitary journey, and you die alone at the very bottom. And you need to decide what is that journey that you want your life to be, right? So when I say perspective, the best thing you can do to realize there's new perspectives is to put yourself in a position that has increased pressure. So if you're a salesman and it's very easy where you are, maybe you're, let's say they don't have these positions, but let's say you were a salesman and you were paid on commission for selling the first iPhone. It's too easy for me. I wouldn't want that job because I know that it's not really sales. It looks like sales. You could have very high numbers, but I'm a real salesman and I like human psychology and I like to find things of value and then find people that, the round fit in the round hole, square fits in the square hole. That's what sales is to me. It's not pushing. It's that doesn't fit in there. Where can I find somebody that this will be the right fit for, right? That's what sales is for me, is knowing you, scanning you, and then figuring out what you want. And then if this fits, I say, hey, by the way, you like this? Dude, check this out. And the guy's like, whoa, that's exactly what I wanted. That's sales to me. It's like, if you don't want it, like there's fucking waste of time. Why would I fucking waste my voice? Why would I waste your time? So that's what sales is kind of scanning people and then knowing what's available well enough that you can put things together. And, it's almost like introducing somebody to the perfect girl. Sometimes you got a girl, you got this awkward guy, but there's this girl who's a perfect match for the guy. And once you find her, you're like, dude, I think I know this girl you might like. And then she's like, she meets him, she's like, oh my gosh, like some corny movie, right? I mean, obviously this is example, right? But you get what I'm saying. Some things just work perfectly. Some girls like to, they like to farm. Other girls, they like to put on makeup, right? So it's like, sometimes it's like this thing. Some guys, obviously are very different, right? So for myself, that's the way I look at, but also from the other perspective is I think that in the end, I have become a much more sophisticated person because I lived in big cities most of my life. And that never goes away. It's like you can't take the small town out of the boy. I think you can't take the big city out of the boy either. Even if you went there as an adult. Once you integrate into a big city, once you understand, the whole thing. Like even now, like I know I'm talking a little bit loud and that the window's open. Now I know we're in New Jersey and the houses are far away, but I'm very aware of the amount of my voice and how far it carries and who could be downstairs and what time of day it is and how loud it is outside. Like I'm very And when I walked here, I walked like a ninja, because I knew when I woke up first in the house, I knew that there's people downstairs, right? Now, obviously, everybody knows these things, but you become more aware and more able to perfectly attenuate yourself into new environments. You know what I'm saying? And how it affects you and how the recording affects. You be able to balance make a better balance and be a person that fits into more places. Like, I want to be a man who is kind of welcome anywhere. Where yesterday we were shooting videos, so the videos you're seeing now, these drifting videos, I shot myself, right? Unfortunately, I didn't use slow motion. I didn't even think of slow motion for some reason. And I was out in the sun, thirsty as fuck, sitting there shooting these videos for 4 hours. And I was like just shooting as the people went by, and I was just like, shoo, shoo, just doing this over and over. And and I was comfortable with these photographers and everything, right? And I'm comfortable with, in a group of Chinese people talking in Chinese, talking about a Chinese saying and how that, or dissecting what one politician said and how what that might really mean for future government policy, and then being able to hang out with a bunch of surfers who are like analyzing the wave, like the water and the swell and direction and the ocean floor and everything, almost like people that are, experts in oceanography or something, right? And then to be able to go and then do something else and to be welcome and comfortable in a variety of perspectives that are all different. So I think for myself, it's not about being a greater person. It's about being welcome in more places. So if you're not sophisticated, what will happen if you don't fit right in a situation, then you won't be invited back. So you might be one time there, but because you weren't ready, okay, this is your responsibility. You have to change. You have to look at yourself in the mirror. You have to look at your wardrobe. You have to look at your shoes. You have to look at other people's shoes. You have to look at other people's clothes. You have to look at what other people talk. You have to look at the way other people drive and park and live their life. And then pick maybe people that you mimic in certain, so you might dress like a Korean guy. Like the Korean guys dress pretty cool. So you might decide that you want to dress like a Korean guy. And then you look around, for example, you might pick somebody and then you say, yeah, a guy in Seoul, right? And then you look at the way he dresses, what he buys, find out where he buys, and you might mimic that for a while and then integrate that. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears, okay? So when you're not ready, you can be in the middle of people, but they know that they can't take you. They can't take you because you're not going to be good there. You won't be ready, so you won't get invited, or you won't get invited back. And so you'll spend your life not knowing that you could have been welcome in a lot more places. But you have to be ready before, right? You have to be ready before that happens. So it happens like with technology, when you really, with your, let's say, salesman, if you don't keep improving your sales skills, what will happen is eventually, they're going to stop paying you so much because they're going to say, well, everybody buys these things anyway. The company's going to figure it out. Technology is going to move on. And you will still have your low-level skills with your high-level expectations, your pride, and your lame ability to sell, your effect on people. But you're going to be competing in this environment where everybody else kept improving, right? Now, they're still themselves, but they're just much better salesmen than you because they're much more sophisticated. You might be more pushy or just know it all or something. You just don't have, there's something you can't see yet, right? Or you might not know enough or whatever it is, right? So if you keep improving your skills, let's say two guys have that job selling something super easy. One guy just keeps studying all the time on YouTube. He buys courses on Udemy. He's like trying new presentations all the time. He's thinking about things. He's watching. For example, if you sell products, you might study selling consulting and services because that's totally different, right? Or you might study how do you sell airplanes. that costs $900 million or whatever, some totally different thing, right? You might understand different customers and you might keep improving. And then when that new product comes out, let's say you're selling Watson, IBM's, basically DIY service where you can use their artificial intelligence. You can basically use their cloud services, pay to use that. So because you kept improving, when Watson is hiring or some other hot new thing, Watson's not hot, but it was for a while. I thought it was going to be hot. That's why I use it as an example. I met the Watson guy who designed it. It was fucking great. I met him at CES show. And we talked all about fucking Watson. He was like, how do you know so much about this? I'm like, I'm just interested in shit. He's like, it was after the show. He stayed for like 2 hours talking to me. And nobody else, like, he basically told me, he says, nobody else the whole show, I had such a good conversation with you and you're not even in the business. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just very interested. Because I think what they were doing was they were trying to take artificial intelligence and offer it up to small business. That's what I saw. Now, obviously, other small businesses didn't take him up on it. So he was right. There wasn't many people like me who were interested in using this like massively powerful tool for their car wash or whatever. Whereas for me, I thought that was a great opportunity, right? And I think in the future, they will be used. But anyway, the product was ahead of time because the only people who wanted AI back then were pretty much people that were like huge businesses like Google, Amazon was using AI, right? Nobody was thinking of AI when they were selling advertising on, for their business, right? Or writing copy or writing email, newsletters or something, right? And so I think that not only do you want to put yourself in the place where your friends are better than you, where your friends dress better than you, where they're ahead of you, so that you feel like the idiot catching up. Like you might be at your fight club, right? When you're studying MMA, you might go to a club where people are better than you, right? That's the same perspective that you would use with clothing or the way people talk or the way, their people skills or their technical skills or their travel. So you travel a lot, right? So from that perspective, you're extremely sophisticated, for your age and where you live. You're the guy like me at the CES show with Watson when it comes to traveling, right? So you see that, right? But there's other things you don't see, right? So, and these are things that only you will be able to see. But be warned that when you see them, you feel like an idiot, right? And then there's other times when you will see something and you will know that you never want to change into that person in some particular thing. You just will know because it's you. Your inner, you've changed enough that when you change, you know yourself even better. Okay? Because you're able to integrate that old self into the new self. Like an old Porsche with an electric motor, Tesla motor, right? You're able to take yourself into this next. And so you will be the one who will be more likely to change because you'll quickly see the things after trying it a few times, if this is you or not, right? Is it you or is it not you, right? I tried a lot of things. I was very experimental, sexually in my 20s, right? And I tried different things. I put up different ads, like a lot of guys know, one of my ads was, watch me fuck your wife, right? That ad was extremely viral and it was very successful. I never did personals, but I did that one. And believe me, I got a lot of good responses from that ad. And it was very, very fun. But after about a year of that, it became boring to me. And I never did it again because I just was it wasn't me. Although I'm not unhappy that I tried it because when I tried that, it wasn't like some official site. Like now they have these things, I guess clubs or something, where it's all laid out for you. For me, I was a pioneer with especially in Japan, like I had no books. It was like, Indiana Jones with his knife going through the Cambodian jungle. Like I had no idea if anybody was going to answer it. I didn't know I thought maybe it was all bullshit. Nobody would even want to do that. And then I realized, much to my surprise, there was a lot of people who secretly were very into that. And it was like, because I was doing it on my own, I wasn't part of website or group. There was no websites then, but I wasn't part of a group. I didn't know of any vocabulary of this. There was a whole niche of people doing this. But because I wasn't part of that niche, I attracted people who weren't part of that niche. And because when you attract people who try things for the first time, it's much more exciting for everybody involved because everybody is on fire. Because they're all like, what the fuck is going to happen? And people are just very nervous and girls are, creaming like mad and people are just shaking with excitement. And that was very fun for me. I would have never done it if it was organized because that wouldn't have been fun for me. But even with all that, after a few months or a year, whatever it was, I just was very bored with it and I never was interested again. And I think it was just too easy. It was like fishing in a supermarket tank or something. I don't like that. I like to be challenged. So kind of on the perspective of improving yourself or becoming something better and all that you're talking about, questions about, I think, and this is the only reason why I think that every guy should know a little bit about pickup. And the reason is not because a guy wants to get married or a guy wants even to get laid. I think that there is something very deep in man, very deep, that cannot be denied. There is a confidence that lacks when a man is not able to fill his, I guess, let's just say genetic, goal or genetic disposition or potential or whatever, right? And I'm not saying you have to do it. Okay, don't you guys listen very closely. What I'm saying is, let's say you're sitting there and you've decided logically that you don't want to get married or whatever it is, or you don't want a girlfriend, but there's a girl who genetically you're very attracted to and you're almost afraid of her, right? Because she is exactly what you want. And I think that if you stand up, walk over to her and say, hey, I saw you sitting there and you were, whatever words you use, it doesn't matter. People will say you shouldn't say you're beautiful. Fuck that. The words don't matter at this point. And when you just say, whatever it is, like I had to talk to you. My name's Paul. What's your name? And you're just looking at her. Now, I would have done it much slower and looking right at her. And believe me, the response is very strong. The reason is because I am not faking it. See, I felt in myself that there was something I had to go talk to her. And I did. As a man, when you feel the call and you don't respond, each time you do that, you become less of a man. Because this is your calling. Not that you have to do anything about it. You don't have to go anywhere past this. You can just stand up and do what I said. If you feel it, okay? I'm not saying go do it. I'm not saying do it with girls you're not attracted. I'm not saying when you don't feel the wolf howling, don't do it. I'm saying when the wolf is howling, go fucking do it. And then once you've done that and you get the response from the girl, you can decide what you're going to do next. But what happens with me is the wolf calls again. And the wolf is like, now it's on. She's into it. If you turn away now, you're turning away from a very rare thing that you have deep inside you. Just move forward with that, right? And then what will happen is at some point, I won't tell you what will happen next, but at some point the wolf is not calling, right? And I think this is what women don't understand, is that women are following that too. The most dangerous thing to a man's freedom, is a natural woman. There's nothing more dangerous than, people say a conniving woman. Fuck that. If you want, let's say for your freedom, I'm using the word dangerous in this, you get what I'm saying. Okay. Often guys like to be caught. So don't, I'm not saying that. I'm saying big changes in your life, right? Just like a woman, at some level, a woman is very afraid of you. When you stand up and you see her, you're afraid of her, and you really she is really your type. And you go over to her and you do what I said and you just look at her and you say those words. She feels it's from inside you and she feels it too. And she's terrified of you at some level. Why would a girl want to date a guy she's terrified of? It's not that she wants to be scared. It's that fear comes from the fact that you could be the one man who could change her life more than anybody ever. Because if she becomes pregnant, this will become the biggest change in her entire life. There's nobody who can change her life like a man, a certain man in her life. This man will cause her life to be totally differently forever. And instinctively, she knows that. Just like a man doesn't want to be caught. He wants his freedom, right? He knows that a woman is dangerous for him in that sense. Woman knows a man is very dangerous because he's the man who could cause her now to lose a lot of her freedom. And not just for a few days, but forever, right? And cause her to become somebody she doesn't know what that is. You know, a girl becomes a mother is a huge change, right? The way she looks at life, the way she acts, the way she does everything, right? And of course, I'm talking about good people right here. I'm talking about the real natural change that you go through. Right? Some people are not, they're not going to follow that. But I'm just talking about, you know what I'm talking about, right? The natural thing, right? So I think that's it, is that you need to feel that calling and follow that calling. But I personally don't think signing a contract is part of that calling. Personally, that's just my perspective. So I think the more that you put yourself in perspective, that you're embarrassed about, look at yourself, and then the more you do that, the more you change and morph, but you keep yourself, right? Because you've learned to that change where you can mimic and then come back and then integrate your real self into this new person, right? And then you can do it, you can do it again. Once you've seen it once, you can easily transform again into a better version of yourself or a different version, of yourself, a different age, whatever it is you want to think of it as. So just one last thing I'll say is that sometimes it takes very harsh awakening especially on things that you're very stubborn about. And I'll tell you one perspective is my friend Jeff in Canada. This guy was so smart. He had 2 master's degrees, a law degree, such a smart guy and such a great friend. Literally, I always say, but he's the nicest guy. I've never said this on Ronin Man, but he's the nicest guy I've ever met. Like, I've never met a nicer guy than him, like, period. So, but Jeff had blind spots. And one of his blind spots was the way he dressed. He just could not see. He was the sloppiest dresser you've ever seen. He always had sweatpants on, like the same sweatpants, and they were dirty. And he wore like dirty shirts, like stretched out dirty shirts. And we were in Tokyo. And so one day I had given him shit about stuff, but he was not getting the point. So one day I said, Jeff, I want to show you something. I was trying to think of ways to help him change. Because he was looking to me as a mentor. Okay, so keep that in mind. I was not just a friend. I was his mentor. I was his sponsor, right? And so I took him to Shinjuku. We went down the tunnel that goes to Tocho, if you've ever been there. And there used to be a lot of homeless people in there. And I said, yeah, look at all these homeless guys. And we walked all through the tunnel. And then he says, yeah, man, there's a homeless guy. What are we going to do? It's a problem for, it was a problem for Japanese society at the time. They figured, that problem's long since gone. But when we got to the end, I said, you know what, Jeff? There's one thing these guys have in common. And he said, what's that? I said, they all dress better than you. And he was so pissed. But we walked back and we walked past all those guys. And every homeless guy was dressed better than him. And that really affected him. Because he could see, finally, that he was not dressing the way he should dress in Tokyo, right? And he changed. And it took him a while to change. And I don't think he ever became a different person. He's not like in some ZZ Top video, the sharp-dressed man. But I helped him to see his blind spot. And I know that did have a big impact on his life, So I think sometimes you need to somehow be woken up to these more, there used to be a commercial in the 70s with like those tough to reach spots, like the housewife's trying to clean the house. It's like those corners where you can't quite clean, How do you get those tough to reach spots? Sometimes you have those tough to reach spots in self-improvement where you're just so stubborn about it. The cowboy guy, Now, I think I would have to go backtrack on the cowboy guy because since he survived 30 years in Tokyo as a cowboy, probably he came out the other end integrated. I know that obviously he speaks Japanese, and maybe he did integrate while keeping his dress, and maybe that was the best thing for him. So this is a very shades of gray topic, right? But I would say don't be like the cowboy guy, even though he was right. Never say to yourself, okay, one of the dumbest things young guys do is they'll see a guy who wins the lottery, and they say, I'm going to be like that. But the problem is you only see him on TV, but you don't see all these people that lost money, right?
Where he got the money from.
Yeah, right, where the money came from, right? You don't see that there's so much money on the table that go to taxes and buy bridges, and it's just there's no money in it, right? He's only seen the one guy, like one guy fell out of an airplane and lived without a parachute, right? He landed right on a tree, a huge branch. It was just big enough to break his fall, and he landed on the ground, broke, I think, one hip and one arm, out of an airplane like 20,000 feet or whatever. But he's the only guy, right, that survived, right? You don't want to say, oh, that guy did it, so I'll just jump out of an airplane because the odds are low, right? So go with a little higher odds. Not that you don't want to have high standards, but I would say in general, you might be that one guy in one area in your life, but don't expect that you're going to win the lottery in every area of your life. Like, don't be so unrealistic that I'm going to start one business. It's going to be Amazon. I'm going to do this, and it's going to be that. I'm going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm going to get the, you know what I'm saying. So be willing to change. Don't hold on to your old self. Like, I'm so great now that this can't be changed. This is such a beautiful life that I have. My kitchen is so perfect. There's no other kitchen that I could not even get one piece of improvement from anybody else because my kitchen is perfect, right? It's like you got to look at yourself and say, maybe my kitchen needs a little work. Maybe I need a little work. Maybe I could use a little bit of outside influence, right? And then it's just about putting yourself into that perspective. Now, for me, I moved to Tokyo, and I lived in a very sophisticated, high-pressure city where that over time influenced many areas of my life, right? But nowadays, you could do it with YouTube, right? You could put pressure on yourself just simply by watching things. Like, I watch a lot of videos about full self-driving and artificial intelligence, and they're above my head, okay, as far as my understanding of programming. But I'm getting there, actually. I'm getting an understanding of these things as I watch more and more videos. But it's not even that I'm ever going to use it. I want to know why self-driving could work, couldn't work. I want to know everything about it. I don't know why. I just want to know. I want to understand. I don't want to be a fool. I don't want to be an idiot. Part of me, the pressure could be feelings too. You don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to be an idiot. You don't want to be below your potential. And this perspective of looking outside you and kind of seeing how low level you are in an area, and acceptance that you are at a very low level in many areas of your life, and just being okay with that, and knowing that you can't fix everything at once. It's not like, you look at yourself and you say, your internal voice says, I'm a fucking idiot. Ronin said this, and I look at myself, no, everybody's got these. You're going on a journey that very few people go on. So be easy on yourself. But just see. All you got to do is see. Because once you can see, everything will work out later. Don't worry. But once you see, like my friend with the homeless guys, once he could see, I didn't say anything else. He figured the rest out. Right? So sometimes it's about seeing. Right? That's it. I don't really know if I have anything else to say on this.
I just have a quick one thing that led me to the questioning, and as far as your standards, I saw an older video of you doing an interview in Chinese where you're dressed fancy. You may know the interview. And I don't know if that was a function of your role in society at the time as like a businessman, that you dressed a certain way and you presented yourself a certain way, and then you left that life, and then you're like, I'm not in this environment, I don't need to do that anymore. Or if at some point you decided, I'm going to present myself as this like fancy business guy, and then it just over time evolved into just more of a laissez-faire or something like that.
Yeah, like why? Right. That's a good point, because I went from a surfer who didn't dress very. I wasn't self-aware of how I looked, and then I was aware of colors because of my mother had a friend who was a color. What do you call it? She was like a specialist. She would choose your season of colors, and so actually I was quite sophisticated on colors. I knew my colors, which sounds stupid, but if you know your colors, you save a lot of money on clothes and you look better. You don't have to spend any money. You can shop at the thrift store if you really know your colors in fashion. You can spend no money on clothes and look great. But the best way to look great is to be in shape. There's no way to cover that one up. That's the number one way. Clothes are bullshit. It's your body. That's the number one thing to look good. But just side note. But okay, so why did I go from that? I don't know which video you're talking about, actually, because I have a lot of videos, but it doesn't matter. I remember I dressed. And I had a tailored suit at one point, a lot of tailored suits. And they were the right colors, and I looked great in them. And I got to say, like, when I wear a suit, that's the most attractive I ever am, I think, to girls, is in a suit. And I don't mean because they think I have money, because a lot of guys wear suits. It's my thing. Like, I look tight in a suit. If the suit is if it's tailored and the color's right and I got nice shoes on, that's my best look, period. So what happened with me was I got a job in Tokyo in the business district, and we had to wear a suit. So what I would do is, at first I rebelled against it. So I was the only guy. I left my suit at work, and I would go camping for the weekend, surfing, and then I would come back on Monday morning. I'd take a shower, like in a bathroom. I'd use the water or a bottle, put it on my head, wash up my hair with a bar of soap after surfing all weekend. And then I would put on my shorts and t-shirt, go to work. And then I'd get in my office looking like a mess, all tanned up. And then I'd go to get into my closet, get my suit, put it on. And then I would wear my suit all day. And then I'd put it back. And then I would put on my sloppy clothes for the day and then go out at night. No one ever saw me wear a suit unless I was at work. That was the way I handled it at the beginning. But then slowly, I kind of realized it was easier just to wear it all the time. And I just wore it all the time. And I realized I got a good reaction from people, which wasn't bad. I didn't mind wearing a suit. It wasn't like it was tailor-made, very comfortable, actually. Just as comfortable as anything else. So, and my shoes were comfortable too. So I won't put up with that. But then I started wearing a suit, and then I started realizing I look good in a suit, look sharp in a suit. And then I went the other way. I realized that at some point, I realized, this might sound like bragging, but I was so good at my job that I could wear whatever I wanted. And I started wearing jeans. And I was a headhunter wearing jeans. Only headhunter I know at the time in Tokyo wore jeans. Literally. I never met a headhunter not wearing a suit. I started wearing jeans. And I had one guy came into a meeting with me. He saw my jeans. He says, I don't think you respect yourself. I won't stay in this meeting because you're not wearing a suit. And this is Tokyo. And I said, thank you for being honest. And thank you for coming down. Sorry to waste your time. And he laughed, but nobody else did. Because I think other people that were different perspective, they looked at me like, what the fuck? This guy must be good. Because he's wearing a fucking jeans. And he's interviewing me, the president of XYZ company. Because as a headhunter, you're not competing with the guy. Okay, it's kind of like a singer. You might meet Mick Jagger, but you're not going to judge him on his clothes because he's a singer and you're, whatever, veterinarian. So you're not going to judge him on your standards. You're going to see him on his standards, right? As a headhunter, my job is to understand people, understand technology and businesses, and where people fit and what motivates them to want a new job, right? So that I became very good at that. You don't need a suit to do that. It's all inside your head and your network of people. So when people would see me, they'd be like, a lot of smart guys would see me and they'd be like, this guy must be really good. Because there's no way he would be calling me in, because he wouldn't even be trusted with a job I could fit into. He wouldn't even have the job, it's like he wouldn't have the right to call people like me in if he didn't have a position with a company that could hire me, right? And, so that worked out in my favor with a lot of the really smart guys, right? The more sophisticated presidents, because I did a lot of presidents and vice presidents and, that kind of stuff, right? Marketing directors, global treasury, people in the treasury for the finance department, finance directors for large companies, public companies, and that kind of stuff, right? Those guys tend to know that you're a headhunter, right? I knew there was two probably the most successful headhunters at the time. They were two lesbians in New York, and they never met anybody in person. They would only do calls. And back then, this is before the internet, if you didn't meet someone in person, no one trusted you. You were hiding. But the rumor was that these women dressed very sloppy and they just sat around their house. I don't know if it was true, but a lot of headhunters thought that was true. Probably was true. But they were so good that they were able to do this, right? They were able to be very unique, right? So for me, I like wearing a suit. I look good in a suit. I miss having a suit. I want to get a tailor-made suit, right? Again, and so to answer your question, I'm comfortable in a suit. As comfortable as I am on a surfboard, right? Or mountain climbing. But in America now, everybody dresses like a slob. So very few people wear suits. Even in Wall Street now, people don't dress nice. So in Tokyo, you still see people. In Shanghai, you still see people dressing nice. But America really has lost it when it comes to, looking good. And I think that's a very big loss to America, myself. I think I understand the American perspective, which I think is more important, by the way. The American perspective is, what do you know? What are you good at? And that kind of stuff. That's very important. But I think that Americans don't see everything. This is not a perfect perspective, because the perfect perspective to me is to know both. To know the Japanese way of doing your, let's say, not that I follow this particular one, but the way they meticulously do their sideburns. There's value in that. There's value in little details. There's value in dressing nice and presenting yourself nice and being early to a meeting. Always being early. Never, when you're late, if something went wrong, like an earthquake, or always giving people notice. They always know where you are. They know about when you're going to come. There's no surprises with them. It's very smooth. Japanese guy, when you're meeting him, it's just like butter. He's going to be there when he says. Everything's going to work out. You're always going to know what's up. And there he is. And there's your meeting. An American often is like this herky-jerky thing. Is he going to be there? Wait, no. How long is it going to take him to get from here? He won't tell you. He'll just say, I'm here now. I'm on my way. And you're thinking, well, what does that mean? Like, how fast does this guy drive? What's traffic like? Whereas a Japanese guy, when he tells you anything, you understand exactly when he's going to be there. you just, okay, he's going to be ready. I'll have a cup of coffee and he'll be here, So that kind of, I think that integrating that. So when you ask about the suit, my answer is long, but I'm very comfortable in that thing. And I like to put on a suit, and I wouldn't mind. I want to get a suit made. Maybe I'll wear it in another video, another channel. And maybe I will have it for things that you don't even need it for anymore, like weddings. I hate weddings. Or for funerals or whatever. I might just have a suit. But I always want a tailor-made suit. It can't be off the rack because they don't fit right. Everybody, if you want to look good, don't buy 2 suits from a store. Buy 1 tailor-made. Don't buy 3. Wear the same one. Doesn't matter. Get either a dark gray or a dark blue that fits your scheme. Different kinds of blue, different kinds of gray, right? Get the right one. Don't get a green one. Don't get a brown suit. Don't be a clown. If you're getting a suit, get a dark gray or dark brown. A dark gray or dark blue. Business blue or gray. There's always going to be a color that fits you in those two colors. And you're always going to look great in a suit. And you're going to be like the man, right? It's not about wearing a suit, the right suit, right? Don't buy a bunch of crap. Have one thing that puts you into that perspective that you want to be in. I remember, it reminded me of something. This is a good point, actually. I went to a wedding in Hawaii, and it was a 5-day wedding. It was a real long wedding, and it was great, and it was like really fun. And I had a suit that I had made, and it was a nice suit. It was cheap, very cheap. It cost me $200 in Thailand, but it was well made, and it was nice colors. And we went there, and one of the other guys, I don't want to say if you might know this guy, he's pretty famous. He was wearing a $30,000 suit. I'm not shitting you. I'm serious. 100% he was wearing it, because I know the guy who went with him. He was wearing a $30,000 suit. And there was a lot of guys with expensive suits in this particular wedding. Only on the day of the wedding, right? He had 2 weddings, a private and then a public, the same day, right? And what was it another day? Maybe it would have been 2 days. Anyway, there's 2 weddings, both weddings. The guys, they were all dressed in suits. And somebody came up to me afterwards and they said, your suit looks the best of anybody here. And I said, this thing costs $200. And they're like, that is so hilarious. Because I had lived in Tokyo long enough. I had seen enough suits. I had seen enough tailors in Tokyo. I'd seen enough that I knew how to do it right. It doesn't cost a lot of money to improve yourself. Right? It doesn't. That's bullshit. It doesn't cost hardly any money at all. What I'm saying you can do, even if you work at McDonald's, you could look as good as what I'm talking about. It won't be easy, but there's ways. I heard there's a website now that has some kind of, you take a picture of yourself next to something, and the AI knows how big you are, and the computer makes it exactly to your size first time, one shot, one kill, a suit that fits you from the internet. I don't know if that's true yet, but I heard this is true. Somebody told me this is absolutely true, and it's cheap. So there's going to be, if it's not true today, it'll be true tomorrow, right? This is coming. 3D printed suits, perfectly tailored without having some hand job tailor. But the suit that fits your body, right? Your body. And that's what we're talking about here. You're the Gabe that you really are. The suit fits you, whether it's the way you act, walk, move, talk, work, or the suit. It fits you. See, so that's what it is. It's about integrating you into that new, improved thing that you see and you want to improve. But it's also that willingness to see yourself as an idiot, because you can only improve by seeing yourself as an idiot. These guys, like they're really good at what they do, like perspective at jiu-jitsu. They're good at racing cars or whatever it is, but they can't do anything else. You mentioned a guy like this yesterday. And I do appreciate that, but I think there is more. There's more in life. There's more in life than even being the world's best. There's more. You have more. Your brain is incredibly complex. And even if you reach the gold medal, whatever it is, Elon Musk, there's something he can really learn from somebody else. And I know that, I guess I have more to say on this, actually. Richard Feynman, one of my favorite guys, if you wanted something interesting to do, search Richard Feynman lectures. Black and white, watch them all. They're fucking awesome. But Richard Feynman, he realized he didn't have one large thing in his life. He played the bongo. He had a lot of girlfriends. He was super cool. He was in good shape. He was like, one of the world's finest physicists, one of the world's finest scientific minds. He was great, but he didn't have art. And so he made a deal with an artist who would teach him how to draw the human body with a pencil. And then he learned, and he became quite a good drawer. And then he traded his knowledge with that guy's knowledge. And so he could see that he couldn't see something, right? And that became very important to him because it was something that he never experienced, and it was so outside of himself. So it wasn't about being the best at drawing. It was just about being in that world was enough to totally change his perspective and be very meaningful for him. So you don't keep doing these things to achieve anything. It's just the wolf is howling. That's it. the wolf is howling, you're going to fucking do it. You don't know, it's not logical. It's the wolf is howling, but that wolf howls for a very fucking deep reason. And you don't have to know the logical reason. The reason is more important than logic because it's an inner longing. Logic is something you figure out later, right? There's that inner longing to survive, right? You don't have a word for it, but a man fights for his life, you know. He might not even know what he's doing frantically. He's fighting for his life. And that thing there, right? So that's what you want to be aware of that. And then I think as you are more aware of that, you will realize how much you want to do with your life. You know, how many things you want to do, like Feynman, to be able to draw somebody and draw perspective and all that, you know, and then there's no reason for it. And exactly, people that are great, they're all like this. Like look at Steve Jobs. If you watch his lecture at Stanford, his commencement lecture, which is one of my favorite, but you know, he just search, you know, Steve Jobs Stanford speech, and he talks about going to classes after he dropped out of school, going to classes that were not part of his major. He would just show up, even though he hadn't paid for it. He would just show up at these classes and nobody kicked him out. And he learned the different fonts, and that became what is, you know, I'll let him say it if you watch it, but that was something that he didn't know, no idea why he was doing it, but it changed our life. Because if it wasn't for him, like, I think he's right. I think we would just have like DOS-looking letters, you know. He changed it all with the Mac, right? And it changed everything, you know. Fonts are a very important part of a business letter or like legal documents. Like I've been working on litigation a lot, and you have to use a certain font and a certain type of font, type of size of font, and then there's a different font for this, and there's a font for that, and it conveys a message. Conveys a meaning. When you read the document, you immediately know that the font influenced how seriously you take this document, right? You know what I mean? So it does influence. It does influence the communication you're trying to make. Even though the words are the same, it influences how people receive it, right? So it's those type of things. And not always logical. It's just like the wolf was howling for him to go into those classes instead of go get a part-time job. So sometimes the wolf is leading you somewhere very important for you. And again, everyone around you is not going to think so. And that's one of my biggest problems with monogamy is that there's not many people who can change with me, who can grow with me, you know, or are ready for me. Because, for example, let's say a perfect partner for me would be somebody who, for one, is trilingual, because a lot of my friends don't speak English. And it's very nice to have somebody that can tag along with me, and also somebody who doesn't mind risking their life climbing a mountain, or doesn't mind, you know, doing a lot of things that, you know, that would be out of the perspective of a lot of people. So I like friends, I like girls who can hang with me, and hanging with me means a lot because I've done a lot of things. And so if you don't listen to that wolf, you will find yourself limited in friends and choices too. Because you won't be able to hang with them.
That's that like quiet life of desperation, right?
But you're blind, and you'll never know why you don't get accepted, and why you can't change, and why you're not asked to go there, or why you don't reach that level, because you're not willing to look at your flaws. So the key is to be able to look at your flaws. And this is one way I seriously digress from most men's channels, because most men's channels, from my perspective, a lot of men's channels, I should say, and I'm not talking about women's channels, I'm sure they're the same, but I'm saying a lot of men's channels is from my perspective, I figured out I'm right, I can handle everything. And my channel is more like, I have a lot of retarded, lame things about myself. Sorry to use the word. I'm sure there's people with handicaps. Seriously, there probably are. You know, I use that word. When we were young, that word was fine. Yeah. But anyway, we have limitations, right? And those limitations can be overcome. Or you can learn to just knowing they're there is all it takes sometimes. You just need to know that it's there. And I have a great example for this one. Really good example. So I told you I learned Japanese from women and from usually just teachers for a little bit, not very long, mostly on my own, in my own life, which was a lot of it was friends, social, cruising around, doing things, right? Casual. So I don't have there's like Keigo and there's Sonkeigo, different levels of Japanese, right? And there's like, depending on who you're talking to, what age of person you're talking to, and what social status of the person you're talking to, and the sophistication or the level of communication needed in certain business meetings or whatever. My ability I'm fluent, I would say, in casual Japanese, and I understand a lot of business Japanese and Sonkeigo. I understand it, but I'm not very good at creating it or producing it. So and I don't really want to get good at it because it's not really my personality. So here's how I do. I have a little crutch I use. So I'll be in a big meeting and I'll be presenting something to sophisticated people. And I know that I have to use a lot of these type of words. And I don't really have them naturally. I can use them, don't get me wrong. If you were watching me, you wouldn't know. But I'm into fluency. I want to be able to just hot knife through butter my whole life, right? I can't do that with these words. So what I tell the guys, I say, look, as you can see, I'm not Japanese. So I'm not very good at speaking Sonkeigo and Keigo. I'll say this in Japanese. I'll say, look, face the facts. I'm terrible at these things. So when I give this presentation, I'm going to give this in casual language because this is the Japanese I know. But I understand, and in America, I could talk like this in English. But I understand here that I should have this other, but I don't. So, but I have respect for you. That's why I'm telling you this. So imagine when you're listening to this person, imagine that I know I have the respect for this group. I respect your positions and all that, but I just don't have the words. So I'm going to go with what I know and what I'm able to do. And whenever I give that speech, I get a great response from them because they understand, okay, he doesn't have the words, but he understands the gravity, right? And after I say that speech, it's quite funny because they've never heard that speech before. Because most foreigners are full of shit. They exaggerate their level of language. And the Japanese sit back and secretly know he's got a lot of flaws in his Japanese that he's not facing. But they don't say anything. They say your Japanese is very good. Right. But they know very fucking well that it isn't. Right. That you've got a lot of fucking flaws, right? Yeah. And you're the only one who doesn't know or doesn't want to face it. But for me, I face it. And I think that's very refreshing for the Japanese too. And they say, foreigners never know this one because it's something you almost have to learn from birth. Right. Talking to grandparents, talking to different levels of people, don't talk like that. You learn these things very young. I never learned that. The emperor, talking about the emperor, I never learned that. I don't even have that culture. In American culture, I never learned that. In the trailer park, there was really nobody I had to respect to the same level that the Japanese did and do. So that even, it wasn't just the words. There was no culture of that, There was no basis for it, right? It wasn't just the words. I didn't even have that as a possibility of having any meaning. I would watch an old British movie and I thought they're full of shit, talking like all uptight, Yeah. I didn't understand anything, right? And now that I would have to say sophisticated socially, I've seen a lot of things. And I understand. You talk differently in different perspective, different times, different clothes, different times. There is a time and a place. And it's not that it's ordained from God. It's not that it has all these meanings. Not that you can't break it. But if you know it's there and you can swim in that ocean, I can be fluent in that ocean of wearing clothes, talking in this, different professions or different, sports or different, blue collar, red, whatever color it is, And so I think knowing your limitations and just being upfront with them too, because there's certain things you're never going to want to improve and you're going to know it. Like I really, now at this point, I'm like the cowboy when it comes to Sonkeigo and Keigo. I really, at this point, it's been so long and I have never learned it and now I've got my little crutch that works in big meetings. I kind of accepted that I probably will never become good at Sonkeigo and Keigo. I might, maybe, when I'm like 65, 70, I might just suddenly get interested in Sonkeigo and Keigo for whatever fucking reason, even though I don't even use it, just for myself, just to learn, even though I don't even fucking use it, because I don't live in Japan. I might just suddenly get interested in that complexity of language and the theatrics of it all, right? And I can see that maybe I will be interested at some point. But at this point, I've accepted that this part of my life, I'm good enough on this thing, right? So sometimes you'll do that. You're not going to always at every level. And I think it goes along with a video Julian made. We're talking about how self-help is always telling you you're wrong and you have to improve. In that sense, self-help is other help, not self-help. I'm talking about self-help here, where you're helping yourself. You are looking at yourself and seeing what you can be and what is possible, and seeing your weakness and seeing the world and the complexity of the world and how little things you can do and how many things you'd like to do before you die and be good at it. How many things you'd like to know before you die, right? And experience, right? And that is self-inspired from your own ability to see and confidence that you can reach those, you can do those things. Some things are just too big. You see a bird flying and you realize that no matter how far hard you flap your wings, you're not going to be able to fly. So that's part of it too, is understanding that some things you can't do. You can make an airplane, but you can't be a bird because you just don't have fucking wings, And that's just the fucking way it is. You can put a wingsuit on, but that's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm talking about jumping out this window, flapping your arms. And there's some point you got to realize that ain't going to work very well, right? And so I'm not saying become all you can be type of motivational video here. It's this realism too. You're going to fall flat on your face, right? Not that you mind falling flat on your face from one floor, but maybe from 40 floors, you might mind, right? So, just realize that, But that's the perspective I have of your original question. Well, how would you state that? Well, put together my answer and your question, and let's end this bitch.
All right, so some part of it that came to my mind was kind of that cliche thing of, you have to know all the rules to break them. You got to know all the notes to kind of play the jazz, right? So I got some of that, and then also, get an idea of what you think the thing you want is, and then just move in that direction. And I guess you'll fuck up. And if you do, then you fuck up, right? Like, I have the idea, I want to dress better, right? So I have the idea of it.
Okay, let me give you one thing. It's very important that you missed, is the idea is not enough. Stand there naked, spiritually, and look at this person who's dressing the way you want, and really feel the embarrassment. Like, look at yourself in the mirror. Like I told Scotty bought Unblackmailable, help him get in shape, right? I told him, go take a video of yourself, show your body to yourself, and be honest with that. Really look at everything that you don't like. And for once, and then I didn't say this actually, but this is actually even better, is look at somebody who looks the way that you want or dresses the way you want and feel that embarrassment. That's an important part that people today are too snowflake to do. But this is the kick in the ass that you need. You need that kick in the ass. I'm dead serious. And how I gave myself the kick in the ass is this. So I studied on my own, mostly languages, almost always. But I went to Jiao Tong University and I studied Chinese in school. And I went to all levels, like Steve Jobs. I didn't go to just the beginner's level. I went to all of them, even though I didn't understand anything. And I wasn't paying for the class. I just went to any class that was Chinese, teaching Chinese. And I bought videos about every single topic that I couldn't understand. And I felt the pain of how little I knew on a daily basis. But also, as my language got better, I found I was so good at learning on my own that I didn't have to go to class much because they were so slow just for me, at languages. But also, there was times when the exact opposite was true. When I was trying to master a new sentence structure, and my way of memorizing things was like blah, 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 blah. I'm very good at that. That means my tone, my speed, and all that stuff is very good. My pauses are very natural. But I'm not a grammar person. But to be really good, you got to get the grammar totally down so that it comes out like a knife through butter in a sentence, right? You can't be haltingly putting nouns and adjectives and adverbs. You can't be doing that. It's got to be like, you got to know it so well that you can play jazz, right? So I would go to class and I would sit there like a fucking idiot in the grammar class, and he would come to me and I would try to answer the question. I'd be like, and the teacher was Chinese and would go, wrong. Like yell. They would yell at you. They would even hit you with a little stick. Like it was Chinese. It was old school. We had wooden seats, no heater in the winter. And this is in Jiaotong University, the third best school in China. And it was freezing cold. You had to wear your down jacket in class, right? It's fucking freezing. And the teacher would yell at you, sometimes hit you. Yeah. And really, really insult you. Yeah. And if you took a phone call, and I did once, it was an important phone call. I don't regret taking that phone call, but I just took a beating from the teacher for the rest of the year because of that, He didn't realize I had a business. I was running a fucking business. I had to take that fucking call. Fuck him. But still, a lot of times that was good for me because I needed that embarrassment where he's like, it's not right. No. And I'm like, it's close. I'm doing good. No. The snowflake in you doesn't want to hear that. Sometimes you need that really strict teacher to be hitting you on the knuckles, and then that strict teacher of yourself feeling like a fucking moron when everybody else is doing it better than you. And the third time, you still can't do it. And you're like, because you get nervous then, because you're really, and you think, oh, here's what's going to be. Laziness will come out. You say, oh, if I just leave and I study on my own, I'll come back with this sentence. Sometimes learning is just getting the shit kicked out of you. And it's good. Like in those grammar classes, I was just getting the shit kicked out of me the whole time. I wasn't really learning. I was just getting the shit kicked out of me. And I was learning that I didn't know and that I didn't have it. And I couldn't understand what I didn't have because I thought I had it. I thought I said it right. She's like, that's not right. I'm like, God damn it, I'm saying the word. She doesn't understand. And then I would go out in the real world and the same thing would happen. I'd say a sentence and nobody would understand me. And God, that teacher's right. I better go back to class because I need that. I need somebody to not be nice. Yeah. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me they don't understand. Now, she knew what word I was saying because I had limited vocabulary. So she knew what I was actually saying, but she's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Doesn't make any sense, And I'm like, I know she knows, but I know I'm close. But because Chinese language requires you to say a word a certain way because of the tones. If you're not saying it right, you're not saying the word. Yeah. And so some Chinese people are very kind, and they will know what you're trying to say, and they will pretend like you said it right. And they'll think they'll look at you as a limited person. That's all he can do. I'm going to pretend like he's doing great. Yeah. But I don't want to be like that. I want to be in the ocean, fighting off the other fish, surviving in real life, right? In that language, right? So that's why I say, look at the person who's doing what you want and look at yourself. Really look. Really feel that embarrassment. Like just look at yourself. Look at your clothes or whatever it is that you're trying to improve. Look at the way you do this or that. And look at the food you're putting inside yourself. And then look at what I put in, whatever it is that you are looking at. And then just every time look at that and just think, that's embarrassing. And then I'm not going to change it yet. But that is embarrassing. That's what I'm talking about. You're missing that part. It's not about changing. It's about seeing. I said first, when you see, you will change. So don't stop motivating yourself. Stop doing that. See reality. It's all you need to do. You're smart. It will all happen naturally, just like sex. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to read any books. It will all come with you. But you need to see first, right? And then when you see, everything changes. The problem with these other guys, because of their own roadblocks, limitations, stubbornness, the low-level people they hang out with, they don't see. And the longer you don't see, the more blind you get. And the more you become that person that's embarrassing to be around, to bring to the party, and then you'll really be lost at that point. So that's why you want to see. It's not to be, again, when you see, don't let the old voices from childhood come. I'm not saying when you see, you yell at yourself like, I'm an idiot. If you had, let's say, an abusive situation, don't do that, because that was not healthy. That was not helpful. Being an idiot is not what I was doing when I was making mistakes in grammar. What I was doing when I was making mistakes in grammar is I was making mistakes in grammar. I was not a worthless human being. I was making mistakes in grammar and in tones. And I was wrong in those tones. And no matter how many times I tried, I was wrong in those tones, right? And so I focused on that. What was I doing wrong? I'm not getting the tone. I'm not getting the tone. I'm not a fucking idiot. I'm not getting the tone. I don't have it. Why can I not get the tone? What do I need to do to get this fucking tone so this teacher shuts the fuck up, right? And I can get past this, right? So I'm seeing that the teacher is right. The teacher is helping me because they are pointing out something that if somebody doesn't care about you, like I care about my friend Jeff, they're not going to tell you dress worse than the homeless people because they know you're going to be angry. So people will stop helping you. That's the main problem because they'll know that you're not listening, right? But if somebody is a student of life, people will be much more willing and with a much better attitude. If the guy's not a student, they might say something, but it's not going to be helpful because they know you're not fucking listening and they're frustrated with that. And you're causing trouble. Maybe you're causing embarrassment. Maybe you're hurting the company without knowing it. Maybe you caused somebody in your family great embarrassment and you're like, that doesn't matter. Well, guess what? It might matter to a lot of people, even besides them, because you might be seen as just a very troublesome person to have around. And it's an invisible, again, it becomes you become in this bubble where you can't see why this is all happening, right? So if you're in this bubble, listening to this, that's fine. Because that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying you're the only one. I'm saying we're all in this bubble in different areas, right? So it's like, what area am I in? Like I said, travel, you're not in that area, right? Job-wise, you're not in that area, So certain things are not. So just know it's not your whole being, not all of you. It's just like, I'm not getting this one thing, and I want to get this thing. I want to be sophisticated like that guy, dressing like that. I want to try that on for a while, right? I'm not going to sell out. I'm not a sellout. I want to try it. It's a new thing. I've never done it. Never worn a down jacket. I really like down jackets. I fit them, I fucking like them, right? I like wearing a suit. Never thought I would, but I do. Now, I'm not saying you will. I'm just saying me. Of course, a tailored suit, not some fucking disco suit, right? I get a nice suit, fits on me, right? I never thought I would like a suit, ever. I thought suits were like really corny. Suits are cool. I like to have a suit, right? I'll have one suit, right? One nice business suit, maybe two, max. And once I get all settled down and everything's cool, even if I don't really need it, I'll probably at least have one tailored suit. Even if I got to pay the big bucks, I would like to have a nice one, right? Right now during COVID, there's some deals on tailor-made suits you'd never get any other time in your life. My friend got a tailored suit from Brooks Brothers for like $600 in New York. That is insane. $600, that's fucking nothing for a Brooks Brothers tailored suit. I forgot how he did it, but somehow he got one. And man, he looks sharp as fuck. Very nice material. And $600, for him, it's not a big deal. He makes more than that per day. And he's really happy with his suit, right? I think that deal is no longer available, by the way. But anyway, so there's ways to do the things you want. I got a nice suit for $200. I'm very happy with that. But I do appreciate that my friend got a suit that's one level higher. I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I would have paid that extra $400, even though it's a deal. Because I am pretty, I solved 90% of the problem with my tie suit, and that's enough for me right now. I don't think I would pay that extra $400. But I appreciate it because he's getting a $600. He's getting a very expensive suit for $600. People spend $300 on a fucking idiot jacket now, or sneakers or something, right? Yeah, just something moronic, right? They look like idiots, and they look like clowns, and he looks like the man with the suit on, right? And when he walks in that suit, he definitely gets respect, and people listen to him, and he's selling ideas. So he walks into that suit, and maybe because nobody wears that kind of suit anymore, people just subconsciously think he knows what he's doing. And he does know what he's doing, by the way. The guy does. And the suit and his knowledge together is deadly. When he walks in and starts talking about how to use the internet to market your business, you definitely listen to this guy, and for good reason too, So he integrated, he improved himself. He had the skills when I first met him, when he had like 2 T-shirts, as a whole wardrobe hanging in the middle of his room. They were both like Birmingham City soccer clubs or something like that, something like that. And he went from that to this extremely sophisticated man who can swim with billionaires and handle himself in any situation. He really has become quite the broad, what's that called? There's a word for that. There's a word for a man who... Renaissance man. He's quite the Renaissance man, from a man who was worth, just as much as a man before. But he also became, and I think he really enjoys it. You can see it. It's like he grew into it. And now he would never go back. Ever. That guy would never go back. So that's the kind of changes I'm talking about. Where you're growing into something that you didn't know existed, but it's you, but it's a greater you. So it's not other help. Right? Yeah. That's all. That really is all I can say.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. That was a really good conversation. As far as the videos, guys, comment, like, subscribe, all those things, and yeah, just leave comments, leave feedback. Ronin, getting back to you guys, and if you have any topics that are burning a hole in your heart or whatever it is,
they got to be good though.
Yeah, they got to be good,
and they got to be good, and they got to be something I want to talk about. So when you give me a perspective, it's not that I didn't listen; it's that I didn't have anything meaningful to say about it. Right? Unique.
Or it's something that you've answered in another video. So that's sometimes...
Yeah. Well, sometimes the question is worse than the question I answered before. It's less self-aware. So in that case, I won't answer because I've already answered a better version of that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man. Let's see. I got to turn this thing off.